And today we are talking sprigs. Now, if you ever wondered what they were and how to make them, I'm going to show you that today. I'm going to show you how to make them and apply them to your work. So I do. Is a design element in pottery. Clay is impressed into a small mold, right, and then attached to the pot like this, right? It's low relief so that you don't have too much of a buildup of clay. So you want thin applications onto the surface of the pot, right? There are two ways that I use sprigs. I use them by impressing into the mold, all right? And I also use them like this by taking the same mold and attaching it to the pot and then gently pressing the clay into the mold from the inside so that I get the impression without too much of the marks on it, right? And that's another interesting way of using sprigs. All right, so we're going to learn how to make them now. So sprigs, as I said, could be made with anything you want. Remember, what you're aiming for is something that has a nice surface, that's generally small, because you don't want your sprigs to be too big, unless of course your piece is going to be a bigger piece. And what you want to avoid is something that may have too many ridges, that you will have undercuts, meaning that you have little corners in your piece that will prevent the clay from coming out easily. Right now, my object of choice are shells. Right, I love shells. I have a history with shells, and these are the inspiration for a lot of my surface decoration. So I have a large shell collection that I would love to add to. Hint, hint, hint. So this is what I use. These are some of the shells that I have used to make sprigs, right? Here also you will notice that I have one of my daughter's hair clips from when she was a baby, and I made a sprig out of it, right? So I have two like these, this one and this one. Okay, so they're very interesting to make and very easy to make as well. Now you can make sprigs in two ways. One, you can use plaster of Paris or plaster, preferably pottery plaster, because you don't want to use plaster of Paris, which is not as strong as the pottery plaster, and you make an impression with the plaster on your piece. Or you can do what I usually do, right, which is take some clay and impress it onto the piece and create the mold from there, and then I just bisque fire these, and they do a great job because when you put clay on, they just pop right out in a few minutes or in a few seconds. Right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to make a sprig. So there are two things that you will need to make sprigs: clay and a pottery knife. Right, simply, oh, and also the object that you're going to do your mold with. Can't forget that. Alright, so all you do is you cut your piece of clay. Right, you choose your object. In this case, I want to make a sprig of the top of this shell, right, because I really like how it curves along there. Right, so all I do is I take my clay and gently just impress onto the form and press it in. and then I pull it off. Right, now I may not keep this one because it was really difficult to get it off, so I may have caused some damage to the internal patterns on the that I have in here. So I can do another one to show you. This one will be easier. Okay, this is also another pattern that I like. Alright, and I really want to get some of those lines on my shells, on pieces on my shells. So again, I just take the clay and I gently press it on. I want to make sure again that my walls are even, so that when it dries, it doesn't dry unevenly. And I just wait, and then I just lift it out gently. And there you go. Well, that's a pretty one. Okay, and then I'll just set it aside to dry. I'm going to do another one. Sometimes you want sprigs not just for texture, but for the shape of the object, right? So that you can get the general idea of the object. And I want to shape up this shell here, right? So I'm going to do that now. Again, you take it, center it on your clay, and you just gently press it in. And you wait, and then you just pull it out. Now you have to be careful not to go too far in that clay covers the shell or the object, and then you have to dig it out, right? So then you gently just pull it out. Right, and this is the general shape of that. One more. Press it in gently. And then just pull it out. Okay, and that's how you make them. You just let them dry, and then you bisque fire them, and you can use them. Okay, so now that we've made our sprig molds, right, they're on the shelf drying, right, now I'm going to show you how to make the sprigs themselves and how to apply them to the piece. Right, you're going to need a few tools. You're going to need, of course, your sprig molds. You're going to need your clay. You're going to need a knife, a brush for dipping your slip of water, and tools to smooth, and of course tools to scrape your surface, to score. Right, so you're going to cut off a piece of clay. Now this is how as I said, I apply my sprig molds, right? Somebody might have a different way to do it. If you do, please comment and share with us, right? But this is how I do it, right? You're going to take your mold and your clay, you're going to lay it on top and press it gently in. Right, now remember, you want this to be thin, so you're going to take your knife and you're going to just scrape off that extra clay. Right, you give it a few minutes, or a few seconds, but this one looks like it's ready to come out. And you just take your knife and press it in and take it out, and there you have a sprig. Right, I'm going to do another one for you. take your clay, cut your piece of clay. Let's do this one. And press it in. Scrape off or cut off the extra clay. Because again, you want it thin. And then just take your knife and lift it out. And those are your sprigs that you're going to apply to your piece. Right? When you finish, you just take your molds and you put them aside. Okay? And the extras clay. And put it back in your bag. And then you're ready to sprig your piece. Now, shell theme here. One of the things that I saw growing up was my grandmother, and she would collect shells on the beach, and she would then take them home and make these elaborate vases out of calabash, and then she would cover these vases with shells, or if it wasn't a calabash vase, it was a box, a jewel box, in the shape of the Trinidad and Tobago map. So I grew up seeing her collecting shells and collecting shells with her on the beach. So shells and the sea and the colors and that memory plays a large part in my work, right? So sometimes I will move away from it, but I always come back to these shells. So this piece here is reminiscent of her taking all of those shells and covering them all over a piece of calabash. But in this case, it's a teapot. So right now I'm going to continue. As you can see, I started putting on the shells. So I'm going to continue doing that now. So I'm just going to put on a couple sprigs for you to see how to do it. Right, so I score my sprig with the tool. I decide where I want it to go. I want to add some smaller sprigs in between the bigger ones. So let's put this one up here. For this, I'm using magic water, which is a combination of vinegar, water, and sodium silicate, which gives clay a nice gooey consistency. I put it on. I take my tool and I just gently work around the edges, careful not to disturb the pattern too much or get fingerprints all over it. And then I just leave it there. Right? My handle needs a little something. So put that there. Now I don't want to put too many on the handle, because remember, we have to use this handle to pour, and we don't want to put too much weight on the handle to cause it to have stress cracks. So I'm just going to put this little piece right on top here. So again, I'm scoring. I'm going to gently score right in this area here. I want to take where's my brush? Here it is. I'm going to take the magic water and then apply to this surface, and then gently apply. Get my tool and let me get the attachment around there. I'm gonna add one more for you to see. I'm gonna put this big one right here. I really like this shell. This one came all the way from the British Virgin Islands. Actually just before Hurricane Irma destroyed Spanish Town. This shell came from Spanish Town. So shout out to Spanish Town and BVI. Put that there. Put a nice soak. And then gently apply. Okay, so now that we have our sprigs on, we're going to set the piece aside to rest a little bit. I may or may not add more sprigs to it. I haven't decided yet, but I definitely know that I have to do some cleaning up. But I'm going to let it rest a little bit longer. Now, while you're working on your sprigs, they may tend to dry out because remember, they're small, right? What you can do is you can either have your spray bottle handy, and as you work, you just lightly spritz them with water. Or you can have a container and you take the sprigs and you store them in the container. Get a nice sealed lid and you have them there for when you want them. Or you can store them in a damp box if you have damp boxes in your studio that you use to store your mugs and teapots in when you are using them, when you are making them, to keep them from drying out. If you have one of those, you can also store your sprigs inside of there, right? So that's it for sprigs. I hope that you try them in your work if you are into pottery. And if you're not into pottery yet and you just want to, you're just starting out, I mean, feel free to make one just to get the experience, right? So until then, I hope you have a creative week. I hope you stay muddy, and I will see you soon on Pieces of My World. Remember to follow and subscribe. Facebook and Instagram at Art by Greta Michelle, and Twitter at Greta Michelle. So until then, bye.